Morning. So I wanted to do a video on engineering and design. I don't know. I'm just looking out. I have a hand truck that's a dual cart, one of the ones that flips down and flips up. It's short. It's the best one I could find on the market. It's not perfect, by any means. The biggest issue I had with it was its tire size. So it to use it as a hand truck was surprisingly effective because it was a really small and inexpensive hand truck. But I got a metal one, and it had like 150 load capacity on it, and I put well over 400 pounds on it with no issues. But so it was a sturdy little hand truck, for under $100. And the wheels could handle weight. The problem was the wheel size was so small. The fulcrum of the wheel was well below the tread height of the stairs. So when you went to pull something up a flight of stairs, you had to vertically lift it about 2 inches on each step before the fulcrum of the wheel will get to a point where you could roll it up over. Which basically made it useless for pulling anything that you couldn't just carry anyway up a flight of stairs. So I tried, in an effort to make the frame that I liked work for me as a cart hand truck combination, by putting larger tires on it. The problem is that the tires then started to just barely. I got solid tires, the run flats, so they're heavy as can be, way more than the hand truck. And then when anything on weight, like anything that weighs more than like 25, 30 pounds, it deflects enough where it can rub, the tires rub, not on the hand truck itself, but potentially on anything you're carrying. So if you're carrying like a square box or a condenser, not a water heater because they're round, but anything square that's wider than the hand truck, it starts to rub on the tires. So I was like, I gotta fix that. I gotta put spacers in. I gotta build up the back. I'm like, my little light, super stashable hand truck is now starting to weigh like 60 pounds. And it's got all these like accoutrements strapped to it to make it functional for me. It's frustrating. I don't understand why we live in a country that has televisions, that has radios, that has all these very, very cool electronics, but we don't have a fully functional hand truck cart that has tires big enough and strong enough to go up a flight of stairs, that has aluminum tubing or steel tubing constructed in a way that it can hold 250 pounds of weight, and tires big and light enough where, you got a metal inner ring and a very thin but wide, like 3 inches wide, half-inch thick rubber. Don't need full rubber tires, but I don't want a plastic hub. I want a metal hub and very thin run flats along the perimeter, and big enough tires where I'm not going to sink into the mud, or I'm not going to be unable to pull it up a flight of stairs. It seemed in something that collapses down small. It seems like the simplest check sheet you could make when engineering a hand truck cart. Like, here's an engineer, right? I'm gonna pay you to engineer me a cart. here's a list of things I want it to do. I want it to be able to handle 250 pounds. I want to be able to collapse into a 2-foot frame. I want to have tires that are at least 8 inches tall, at least 3 inches wide, that don't weigh more than 5 pounds. Every hand truck out there has failed. I mean, so what I just purchased, because I got a little frustrated, I had a $60 hand truck. Between tires and the spacers, if I do it right, I'm gonna spend another $30 in probably 2 hours. So now I'm in like $95-$100 on a hand truck. When I'm done with it, it's gonna be twice as heavy as it should be, because I don't have the tools to really build it right from the ground up. I'm like adding stuff on to, and I have to add sturdy stuff or it's gonna break in first time I put anything on it. So I went shopping again, and I was again disappointed with the selection out there. There's one hand truck that it's more of a cart. I'm suspicious at its ability to be a hand truck, and that's the R2D2 or R2D whatever. I'm calling it the R2D2. But it's like the mini. They call it the rock and roller, the mini rock and roller. So I picked one up. I got it used on Amazon. So it was like one of those ones that you get it for like $20 less because somebody else returned it. It's usually got a scratch on it or a little dent, or sometimes even just the packaging is messed up. But I try to pick those up when I can, because I think I paid like $75 after tax. Look, $75 after tax. I don't want to spend it. My boss probably would offer to buy it for me. But I just gave him this whole speech about how I like my hand truck. It just doesn't have the right size tires. But now that I have the right size, and he bought me tires. Not much, but still. And then I put the tires on it, and now I'm having additional issues. And so I don't want to go back to him and be like, I know I said I didn't want a new hand truck, but no. So I hate it. So anyway, I'm giving this one a try. My only concern is that instead of the round aluminum frame, it has a square aluminum frame, and I think that's less strong. Also, it looks like the hand truck, like when you have it set up like a hand truck, it's not a true hand truck. Like, you can't slide something onto it. The hand truck is like a 3/4 inch frame. So it's like, it's not a real hand truck. And that part of it isn't like fully welded. Like the hand truck is connected to the backside with a hinge. It's not like a fully welded solid section where you would expect that to have like the most strength. So even though the rock and roller looks like the best solution available on the market, it also looks like it was engineered with moving music equipment from venue to venue, which would utilize the equipment in much more of the cart position than the hand truck position. And the hand truck position probably for less abuse than what I intend to use it for, which is, pulling condensers around houses and pulling furnaces and air handlers upstairs and pulling water heaters down into basements and up out of basements. That's a rough job for a hand truck, because the stairs, the weight dropping on the stairs and pulling it up the stairs, it's a lot to ask from a metal frame. Anything. It's a lot to ask from anything. So I'm hoping that this new one isn't a great cart and a terrible hand truck. And I kind of have that feeling in my stomach like I just spent $75 on the best cart in the market, but it's not going to solve, or I'm going to have some issues with its functionality as a hand truck. I don't understand. I need it 50-50. Half the time I need the hand truck to pull a big piece of equipment up and down stairs, and half the time I need a cart to drag all my tools and equipment into a restaurant where I don't want to do 50 trips and I can't stack it on a hand truck like that. So, because it's a bunch of stuff, it needs to be stacked, it needs a cart. So I just don't understand why there isn't a high quality, convertible, collapsible hand truck cart that is engineered by professionals. I mean, I'm just looking at what's out there, and it doesn't, if I was like an engineering teacher, I would bring like a bunch of hand trucks into my my classroom, and I would just point at them. That would be my teaching for the day. I'd be like, failure, failure, failure. And I would explain why. Because each one out there has an issue that's correctable. And it's just a question of designing the tool better. Making it stronger in the right spots, making it out of different materials, making it different shapes. It could be so much better. Just the hand trucks out there, garbage. And there's so much technology, it amazes me. We can fit like so much computing power, so many switches into a little tiny phone. We can do that as human beings, not we, as me. But like when it comes to like these macro engineering, I don't even call it macro. It's like old school, simple stuff that should be improved and refined by now to a level that is amazing. You know, I'm amazed by the technology in a phone. If I were to really think about it. If I were to really think about the engineering that went into a hand truck, I'm like, I could do better. And I'm not even a professional engineer. I don't look at my phone and think I can do better. I know it was done by a professional. I look at a hand truck and I'm like, I could do it better. I could. So I think there's a lot of meat on the bone. I was talking to a guy the other day, because I like to invent stuff. I like to think up. I've invented a few things. Nothing that got patented because the patent process. Plus, when you're being stalked, you don't really have intellectual property rights because you're under constant surveillance. And even if you're not, even let's say I came up with a great idea that was worth a lot of money, but I'm under surveillance, so immediately 5,000 people that hate me have the same idea, you know. And wow, that's a coincidence. Has nothing to do with the government. They're all exactly like me. Anyway, the truth of the matter is, when you have an invention or you have an idea and you look out into the world and you see that nobody else has done it or done it as well, there's a competition that takes place for the providence of that idea, right? So this is the heart of the Western economic system, is the idea that you own an idea, that the idea is your property, and you need to prove that through, you know, a series of Herculean tests to the government. And you need to give money to a lot of lawyers. You need to give a lot of money to a lot of lawyers. and they go out and they research, see if anybody's ever thought of it. And I can guarantee you that if you were to look at if you do patent searches, there's somebody out there who's come up with something close. It's not going to be the same thing, but it's going to be close, because there's always something close. Even if it's not on the market, it's in the patent office, I can guarantee it. So then it becomes a fight for intellectual provenance. Where did the idea come from? Did you see that other idea and then, modify it? And if you did, that's not necessarily legal, but if you did you modify it enough? Did you improve it enough? So there's all these tests, and once you realize that you're being stalked by people who hate you, who want to kill you, the idea of going through that is, it's obviously a waste of time. Even if they were to not compete with me, based on the privy of their stalking data, then as a governmental organization, making any concession about ownership. I mean, these are the people who took my children. They took my angels away from me. And then they told me that they weren't my angels. Of course they don't want me to own my own ideas. They don't even want me to own my own children. They're demons. They're demons. They pay women a lot of money. That's how they get their power. They don't get it from work. They don't even get it from working men. They get it from prostitutes that they pay, like my mom. Like most government employees, like most female judges, their moms. Second, they're government employees, selling their own children, selling anybody's children for that power. Oh, they love that power. But you can't compete with them. Not just because they're women, and not just because they're the proxies put up by Satan to stalk and abuse you. Because the military and male police officers, they don't want to be perceived as the ones doing the stalking. They are. Definitely. It's some dude sitting behind a computer watching me 24/7. But when I go, it's always a woman who's like, but it's not. They pay these terrible skanks. Not much. It doesn't take much to, what's it called? The maiden coup. When you take over a country, like what the United States did to Ukraine, when you take over a country, the easiest way to do it is to just give several prominent women $1 million. It is so much more effective than a military invasion. A military invasion, you're entrenched. You kill people. You ruin your reputation. You end up policing the country. It bankrupts you. It demoralizes your countrymen. And it destroys your productivity as a nation, because the majority of your resources go to dominating other people. When you just pay the women of the country, when you give them money, and if it's counterfeit money, that's even better. If you just print money and give it to them, you don't even need to send the army. The women will do it for you. They'll do anything you want. They'll train their children how you tell them to train their children. It's how it's done in the real world. It's really not done with militaries that often compared to uh, subversion tactics like a maiden coup, like paying the matriarchs of a society huge sums of power um, to sell children. That's what they're doing. They're buying the children. It's not like a military murders the children, so I don't want to say it's better. It's just as bad to buy children through corruption of the mother, which is what it is. You're financially corrupting the mother against the child's interests with a maiden coup. But with the military, I mean, you're just shooting them. If you don't do what they say, they shoot you. But corrupting the mother, I mean, it's just as bad. I think it's just as bad. It's just a whole lot more effective. If you were to really look at like the risk reward analysis of dominating a country, subverting the matriarchs is definitely the most reward at the lowest risk. If you want them to work for you. I mean, if you just want to kill them, you could do it easier. But if you want to like profit from the labor of a nation, subverting the mothers is how you do it. It's just how it's done. It's been done that way for like 6,500 years. We know, going way back into India. It's been going on a long time. It's a military tactic. It's highly effective. But it's not done by the military. It's done by, well, maybe it is. Maybe, where do you draw the line? It's certainly not done by conventional forces in a military. But the act of subversion through corruption, I believe, is not done primarily by private industry. I think private industry will engage in corruption, but they're not really smart enough to pay the mothers, or maybe they just don't have the resources to pay the mothers. It would be brilliant if they did. Imagine if General Electric went into like Yugoslavia or something, and instead of bribing the senator, they just bribed the senator's mom. It cost half as much, but they got like twice as much out of it. It's what it is. It's just a more effective way of corrupting a society, because the mothers oftentimes have a lot of influence, but don't have a lot of power. So, relatively speaking, you can leverage that influence with a lot less power input, because they're super impressed by not a lot of power. Whereas the son, or the senator, or the general, he's already got a lot of power. When you go to bribe him, you got to bring a lot of power to the table, even to make a dent. And even then, if his mom or his wife or whatever tells him otherwise, he's going to have conflict with accepting that corruption. But if you corrupt his mother, it takes very little power, and she's constantly going to be influencing him no matter what he wants. So it's just, the maiden coup is just the most effective way to subvert and dominate a country for the long term. It just means that they're terrible mothers and they die alone. That's it. That's the downside.